Let's see, let's connect. Hopefully that works. Okay. Awesome. Today I just want to take up a few minutes of your time to talk about a thing that I call sub-packages. There can also be considered lightweight packages or something. It is actually an opinionated approach that I mostly use for organizing Dart code bases that might evolve to larger levels. And it's something that I want to talk about just to start as a discussion starter. We can talk about it later or maybe have a few questions as well. I'm going to start off with an example. We all know that our code bases, our files, our widgets in Flutter, they can tend to grow quite large. And of course, at certain points, we start to split things up. It's a good practice to split things up into separate widgets. But we can go from separate widgets to separate files, to separate packages, and so on. Mostly, we start from the top. We'll just create some private widgets first. We're not gonna over-architect anything to get started. We'll just start very simple. So let's go through that first step real quick. So if you have a big widget, you can just chop it up into smaller private widgets, because then you don't have to expose these widgets to the rest of your code base. No other pieces of your code will import those and interact with those when that was actually unintended. But at a certain point, this file can start to become very large as well. It's going to get hard to search for things, so we tend to move it into multiple files. Very simply put, we just have several widget files and they import widgets from each other. Now, because we did this, we actually are kind of forced to make those widgets publicly, and so they're not private to our code base anymore. So what could happen is that other pieces of the code base that in this example doesn't have anything to do with the dashboard can actually use those widgets that were considered private as well. Well, that's not actually intended usage. So that's where sub-packages come in. This approach will allow you to actually have a directory with a source folder inside of that where we keep all the widgets, and then we have what is considered a barrel file. I don't know who heard that term before? I think some of you might have heard that. It's actually what we import a lot when we use other packages as well. And you see this naming convention where we have the name of the directory and then the same name as a Dart file as well. Now, what this barrel file exactly is basically just kind of like a guard for that directory, which will only export the classes that we intend other pieces of the code to interact with. So by using that, we can just import it like this example. Just import the barrel file and you'll get all of the classes that you intend to let the rest of your code base interact with. Now, the other thing that we saw was the source directory in there. Actually, the source directory simply acts as a barrier between internal classes of your subpackage and external classes. So internally can just have relative imports, so you don't need to pass past the source directory. So the golden rule for these subpackages is just to simply avoid importing anything that contains source. And it's a simple rule that just protects unintended usage of certain widgets in our code base. Of course, it's still possible. you can still just import source. I made a little linting rule that will help with that. It will basically detect whenever you're importing anything that is considered source within your same project. And it will also give you quick fixes to help that. So this might be something that you can use if you want to try the approach of sub-packages. Now, what are the advantages to these sub-packages? They're just really easy to set up and maintain. We don't have to create separate packages from the get-go. We can later evolve them into larger separate packages, but it's just easy to get started. It avoids unintended usage, as I explained. And with this lint rule, you can also make sure that it enforces not to break this rule in your CI/CD pipelines. As I mentioned later on, because we're already bundling everything and we're using that barrel file to interact with everything within that directory, it's super easy just to take it and put it as a separate package afterwards in a mono repo or whatever you like to do with it. And it still stays flexible. If you just have a separate package, you cannot always easily interact with everything, or you cannot override this rule, but just by using this, you can still kind of find a middle ground in there. You can still easily have write tests in the rest of your project for it without looking at those import rules. So that's basically an approach that I tend to use for most of my projects. I don't know if we have a bit of time for questions, if anybody has some. If not, you can always reach me as well.
Is there a reason when you would still use single file with private widgets then?
If it's just a very small file, it's going to be easier if you just want to have a simple widget tree. If you don't want to repeat yourself, you can have like separate widgets within the same file. I imagine like if your file would be, let's say, less than 100 lines, I think it can become very bloated if you create a separate file for every widget. So
but maybe then it's more consistent throughout your own code base, so in that case it's also maybe
it might be, definitely.
okay. Cool.
The sub-packages, when you start using them, as I listen now to your presentation, I would expect for every stream maybe you start to use one sub-package, or
You can actually organize it the way you want. I mostly tend to go with a feature-first approach, which will then bundle everything of that feature, and then actually only expose what should be used by other features in the barrel files. But you could also use this differently. Also, this way of using barrel files and sub-packages also allows you to work in a nested way as well. So you can go quite deep with that and reference, export stuff from other barrel files in there as well. All right, thank you.